What's up, everybody? It is February the 23rd, 2018. It is a beautiful Friday afternoon where I am currently located. I hope that wherever you are located right now as you're listening to this, whether it is live or whether it is the replay video, which I will actually be editing because I want to add some things into this video that I won't be able to add during the live stream. So regardless of where you are, wherever you may be, I hope that you are having a great time. And today I was going to do what I usually do, and that is touch on a lot of different subjects. I wanted to touch on some of the NRA stuff that's been going on the past couple days, because I didn't do a show on Wednesday. I decided to skip that show for various reasons, so that there was some news stories that I definitely needed to catch up on. But today I'm actually going to postpone a lot of that stuff again, because instead of talking about the problems of the NRA and Dana Loesch and arming school teachers and some of that other crazy stuff that's been going on in the news lately, I wanted to spend the entire live stream today discussing Black Panther, because first of all, everybody's still talking about it. That's number one. Number two is the last video I made was purely just kind of a review video. I didn't really touch on some of the hidden messages, I guess I should say, that's very apparent in the movie, and some things aren't so apparent. Some things I think have gone over the heads of a lot of people. Not necessarily because they can't see it, but that's because there's just so much going on in that movie. There's so much being said that needs to be broken down. And I said in my review article that I posted on Black and Intellectual, I said that people are going to be breaking this movie down for months, and I truly believe that. Maybe not to the extent that people were the first week it came out. So I am starting to see a decrease in the volume, in terms of the number of people who are talking about the movie. But still, like, people are still going to be breaking the movie down for a while, because there's just so much to unpack. And unlike a lot of MCU movies where the villain is very predictable, the villain is very static and very plain, Black Panther did something that most of these other comic book films don't do, and they fail at doing. And that is creating a villain and a hero. Both the hero and the villain is flawed. They're both flawed characters, okay, for various reasons, and they both have very powerful points to make. And so I want to break down some of that stuff. I don't think I'm going to be able to get through everything today in terms of everything that I want to touch on, because some things, before I really get into some topics, I want to see the movie again for a second time. I haven't seen the movie a second time yet, and I'm going to do that probably about Sunday, because I'm refusing to buy a bootleg or watch bootlegs and stuff like that, simply because I do think it's important that we give money to this movie and financially support this movie. So I don't want to do the whole bootleg thing, and then that's kind of stereotypical anyway. But so yeah, so that's just that. So there's certain things that I'm gonna slightly touch on without going into too many details. But before I really get into the meat and potatoes of Black Panther and some of the hidden messages in the movie, some of the themes in the movie that were kind of just slightly touched on that I think a lot of people are missing, I want to redirect people to an article that just went live on the Progressive Army's website. And the title of the article is the title that I use for this live stream, and that's The Hidden Messages in Black Panther. And it's not to make it, more, ooh, ah, than it actually is. It's just, it's a deeper metaphysical analyzation of some of the things that I saw that I think that needs to be repeated, that I don't see a lot of other people repeating, because, like I said, there's just a lot to unpack with this movie. But first, though, so definitely check out that article that I wrote for the Progressive Army. But then, too, I want to touch on the different reactions to this movie that people are having. Because with a movie like this, and you have people saying this isn't a movie, it's a movement. I'm not going to use the word movement to describe a fictional film. But it is a movie. It is a very metaphysical movie. It is a deeply, deeply metaphysical movie. Okay, where you can't look at it from like a surface level. And even so, it's so layered that there's a surface level interpretation of certain things that I'm going to be getting into. But even if you peel back that surface layer, you'll see that there's a deeper sort of message that's being told. And whether or not the creator Ryan Coogler and his co-writer, whether or not they intentionally put some of this stuff in the movie is not really known. And whether or not like some people are just reading too much into the movie, that's not really known. But that's what happens when you create a movie that does this to the community. Black Panther is like a love bomb, like if I were to describe it that way. It's like a bomb of love, if there is such a thing, that's been dropped into the middle of the community, and people just don't know how to react to it. You know what I'm saying? Like some people love the movie. I love the movie. Some people don't like the movie. I don't think too many people hate the movie. Even the people I think are being critical of it, I don't really sense too much hate. But there are some critics, except from like the right wing. They definitely hate the movie. The alt-right types and Ben Shapiro and I even saw like a review. I don't watch these right-wing reviews, by the way, but I even saw a review that was done on daggone InfoWars. InfoWars did a review of Black Panther. Like, when Alex Jones's crazy, crazy self is, when his people are putting out reviews of this movie, you know that it means more to people than just a movie about superheroes fighting each other. It means that people, all people, like are seeing the underlying messages in this movie, and people are taking it different ways, right? So I'm going to focus more on the Black community and how we have interpreted this movie, because I think that's the most important thing. I was watching another video, and they were talking about how we have, when I say we, I'm talking about Black people, we have really taken ownership of this movie. And so much to the extent that you can't really talk about Black Panther without including a Black person. I mean, you can, but you're not really gonna get the full scope of what's happening and what this means to the Black community without talking to a Black person. Because this is clearly a movie where there are a lot of messages for the Black community, not only in the African American community, but within the diaspora in general, and within the African population. This is something that I wrote in the article that I'm gonna get into a little bit deeper in a second. This is not a movie just for African Americans. I need people to understand that. Okay, this movie is so Black. Okay, it's Blacker than people realize. like really, this movie is so Black. it goes beyond just African Americans. You know, there's something in here for everybody. So I need people to understand that while there is sort of a theme of Africans and our relationship with African Americans and our relationship with Africans and vice versa, it's not just even that though. Like there are other messages about the, you know, issues within the black community that need to be discussed that are being put out there in this movie. Okay, so that's why we have complete ownership of this movie. It is because of the African American dollar, and if you are in other countries as well. So if you're in the UK, and I saw even the movie is doing huge numbers in Brazil among Black Brazilians, Afro Brazilians. It's breaking records in Africa and South Africa, wherever you are. Okay, if you are a black person, you are responsible for this movie blowing up the way that it has. Hold on 1 second. I forgot to put my phone on mute before going live. Give me 1 second, family. I'm waiting for this call to end so I can mute my phone. But yeah. Okay, there we go. Yeah, so let's talk about how certain people have reacted to this movie. So I wrote an article about Afrofuturism, and that was sort of my review article. That's on Black and Intellectual. You can also find it on Twitter. There are almost like two polar responses to this film within the black community, and there might be more. It might be more than two responses, but it's almost as if you have two responses. You have the responses from Afrofuturists or people of an Afrofuturist or an optimistic mentality who love the movie, and even people who I think are in this group, I think are critical of certain parts of the movie as well. And then you have sort of a reaction from people who are in more of a Afro-pessimistic camp. And the beautiful thing about this movie is the debate itself. I love this debate. Because one of the reasons I think Ryan Coogler made this movie, or one of the things that I think that are being said in this movie, is the relationship between black people, how we interact with each other. That is a deep underlying theme in this movie. Okay, and you can even see when it comes to the movie itself, the difference of opinion between Afro-pessimists and Afro-futurists. Okay, I look at this movie because I'm an optimistic person. I'm a glass half full person and not a glass half empty person. So if I look at a glass half full, I'm looking at it and I'm saying to myself, okay, this is how much water or whatever liquid is in that glass. This is how much I have left, and I'm going to see what I can do with this to make my situation better. People who are more glass half empty only are going to look at things in terms of what's been lost or what they view as what's been lost. And it's the difference between pessimism and optimism. So I look at this movie and I only see the positives in that come about in this movie. Not to say that there are negatives. Okay, there are story decisions that I don't agree with, right? A lot of people have talked about the whole UN thing, and I'm going to get to that in a second. Let me actually add that in my notes. T'Challa going to the UN at the end of the movie. Hold on. UN, T'Challa, N. Alright, so I'm adding that to my notes just so I don't forget to bring that up. Because I even have a slightly different reaction to that than some people do. Okay, but when I look at a film like this, you have to look at it from the point of view of what's come before. And unfortunately, when it comes to Hollywood, there are a lot of negative images and negative depictions of black people. This is kind of standard. It's not to say that there aren't there aren't any positive images of black people in media, because there are, and there are certainly more positive images of black people in U.S. media than there are in media than there is in media in other countries. Like in other countries around the world, where you have, like, look at Brazil. Brazil is a perfect example of this. You have black people heavy in that country. Okay, in a lot of these countries, they don't even put black people on television. Okay, there are countries, and I talked about this in the previous video, there are countries where they still just wear blackface on television and just complete mockery of black people. So it's not that bad in US media, but it's not as good as it can be either. And once again, Black Panther, which is a product of US media, is at the forefront of pushing the images, the positive images of black people ahead. Like, we're really ahead of the curve in terms of other communities, in terms of other countries and other groups of people. So a lot of people have been saying that this movie portrays African Americans in a negative light. That's not the only criticism that I've heard of the movie. I've heard other criticisms of the movie as well. And I do not agree with that. Because, as I'm going to get into in a second, okay, there are... Hold on, I'm retweeting something right quick. Okay, so yeah, so it's not just this isn't just a movie. Okay, it's an idea, and because of that, people are gonna have different ideas of how certain things should be displayed. You see, Killmonger isn't the only representation of African Americans in this movie. Okay, so I'm going to get into that now. Let me pull up the article. That's going to be the first thing I touch on. Okay, because one of the deeper messages in the movie, okay, as I was alluding to earlier in this stream, is the relationship between Africans and African Americans. Now, some people have interpreted this incorrectly, I think. Not out of spite or out of dislike or anything like that, but the relationship between Africans and African Americans is reflected in both T'Challa and Killmonger. Okay, let me explain. Let me read this passage to you. This is what I wrote. I said the two main villains in the film are Ulysses Claw and Eric Killmonger. The former, so Claw, represents colonial imperialism and the literal robbing of African resources. Let me stop right there for a second. Okay, because Black Panther is a representation of, and I didn't even mention this in the article because I didn't want the article to be too long. But Black Panther and his disgust for Claw is very reminiscent of African Americans and our rhetoric against colonialism. Not just African Americans, by the way, but Africans, because Africans have been vocal against colonialism and neo-colonialism as well. Okay, so within the character of T'Challa, you see that anti-colonial message. Now, they don't really go too hard with that message in the movie, and that's kind of one of the problems I have with the movie. They decided to focus more so on the relationship within the black community, which is part of the duality between Killmonger and T'Challa. Okay, that's clearly a play on the relationship that black people have with each other. Okay, but T'Challa is a clear anti-colonial representation of blackness. Okay, he so much so that they have been going after Ulysses Claw for years, and they just haven't been able to capture him. Now, continuing, the latter, so Killmonger, is symbolic of African Americans and the justifiable outrage many of us have over being abused in America. This is something a lot of people have picked up on. So I'm not going to stick on that too much because That's one of the main reasons Killmonger is such a popular character to begin with. That was very, very clear and present. That everybody got that in the movie. However, Killmonger is also representative of how African Americans, while hating the system of white supremacy that oppresses us, okay, how this system can be molded by how we, okay, how we can be molded by this system and used as a weapon against people from our ancestral homeland. People who look like us and share our blood. So, I haven't seen anybody mention this. And trust me, I've listened to numerous videos now about this movie. I've read several articles about this movie. I haven't read and seen everything, though. So it's possible somebody has brought this up and it's just escaped me. It's eluded me. Okay, but Killmonger is a very, very, very clear. This is one of the first things I picked up on when I was watching the movie. Killmonger is a clear representation of black people who become co-opted, okay, by the very system that they hate. Killmonger is clearly someone who wants to use, and he says this in the movie, he wants to use the tactics of the oppressors against them, because he's been around them for so long, and he has so much relationship with them. He's been trained by them. He wants to use their tactics against them. Okay, but check this out though. Even in his effort, even in his vision of doing that, he actually attacks the most powerful, the most independent, and the most important independent African polity in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So in an effort to attack the oppressors, he has to destroy Wakanda. And he doesn't realize this. It's reflective of people who join organizations, and I'm not going to name the organizations, but real world organizations, okay, for various reasons, okay, for access, for money, because they think it'll give them a certain level of prestige within America, alphabet agencies and different organizations and things like that. They join these organizations thinking that they represent the progress of integration, really. And so many times they actually allow themselves to be used by the same people that they are fighting against. Case in point, you can see this within the black, some people call it the black misleadership class. I call it the black collaborator class, whatever you want to call it. Basically, black people, whether they be politicians or not, who join the system, who partake in the system, right? And they get into positions of power and leadership in America, and they do not speak up for the community. People have noticed this in the relationship between Killmonger and T'Challa, right? Because T'Challa is also a representation. This is how layered this movie is. T'Challa is also a representation of the privileged classes of black people, right? Of the elitist privileged class of black people. But even within Killmonger, you see that dynamic. It's just more hidden. Killmonger is the black person, is the black American or the black Westerner in general, whether you're in the UK, whether you're in Africa. This is why I said it's not so much Africans versus African Americans. It's more a dialogue between how black people interact with each other than anything. Because you can see these examples, whether you're talking about black people in the UK, black people in the Caribbean, black people in South America, black people in Africa. You have black people who are in positions of power and black people who are not in positions of power. And even with Killmonger, you see that the example of that black person who got access. In his case, access to elite, top secret training that other people don't get access to. Okay, and he thinks he's using that training that he's received from the CIA to attack the oppressor, but look at what he does to Wakanda in the interim. Like I said a second ago, he has to basically destroy Wakanda, which is what would have happened. He would have created a civil war dynamic in Wakanda. He would have had to destroy Wakanda to save Wakanda. It's very powerful. It's very deep. Okay, but you have to look at it on multiple layers like that, though. Okay, so I continue in the article. I said, let us not forget that Killmonger is a product of U.S. imperialism due to his CIA training. He got his nickname because of all of the people he had killed in the name of American foreign policy. So Killmonger's takeover of Wakanda, his usurping of the throne, is highly symbolic of America's foreign infiltration of independent African nations in an effort to destabilize them. This destabilization of Wakanda would have certainly happened had Killmonger been successful in arming the world with high-tech weapons. This is so deep that most people have missed this. Most people have missed this very clear message of being used. Now, one thing they didn't do in the movie, and this is something a lot of people have been critical of, right? Showing Everett Ross, the CIA agent, as being the hero. He's not a hero. Well, he's kind of a hero. But he's only a hero because of his acceptance of black, for the lack of a better term, black power. Because that's what Wakanda represents. Not black power in the sense of Stokely Carmichael black power with the fist. I'm talking about power in terms of domination, in terms of leadership, in terms of rule. Wakanda is a independent black state. Okay, so the only way Everett Ross, the CIA agent, is a hero is by accepting and taking a knee almost to the black power of Wakanda. Because initially when we see Everett Ross, we see a man who is completely ignorant. Everett Ross is a representation of the ignorant European Westerner. Okay, that's why Ryan Coogler kept putting into the movie about how he kept allowing Everett Ross to call Wakanda a third world country. Even though we all know Wakanda was doing that intentionally, that was on purpose. They wanted people to think they were like that. But still, the fact that he is not knowledgeable of the reality shows his ignorance. So he is a representation of naive and ignorant Westerners. Okay, that's Everett Ross. Okay, so you have to peep that. So yeah, like going back to Killmonger for a second. He was trained to destabilize countries. He was trained to bring down independent countries. Because that's his whole thing, you know. That's what he was trained to do. And it's mighty interesting that we see a black character being represented in that dynamic. Because that's saying a lot. And that's part of the misguided rage of Killmonger as a character. Okay, because he didn't realize that the training that he had been put through to destabilize governments and to topple governments, he was effectively doing that as leader of Wakanda. Think about it. Think about what happened. Think about, Killmonger was barely in power for a minute, and he had the entire hierarchy fighting each other. He had the Dora Milaje fighting. I don't know what their name was. I don't think they're supposed to represent the Hutu Saraze. That's the Wakandan secret police that you see in the comics. I don't think Wakabi, the border people. I don't know what they didn't really name them. But at the end of the movie when you had the Dora Milaje fighting Wakabi's people, he had them fighting each other, and he had only been in power for a brief period of time, and he was already starting a civil war. I think there's a important message within Killmonger to be careful about the agenda of the people around you. But I digress on that. So I'm gonna continue with the article. It says, so as much as Killmonger may have thought inside his own mind that he was helping Wakanda and helping blacks of the diaspora, he would have done far more harm than good, and Wakandans would have paid the greatest price. So I kind of already mentioned that. So let's go on to the next sort of hidden message in the movie. Okay. Away from Killmonger as a CIA weapon against Wakanda, let's talk about the rage of Killmonger, the rage of Eric Killmonger. So Killmonger also represents the misplaced anger of a young black male who feel. Let me restart this. Killmonger also represents the misplaced anger a young black male feels when he's raised without a father figure in his life. Killmonger's anger, while justified in many ways, would not have been there had he not lost his father. Again, this is something that I noticed personally when I saw the movie. I saw the dynamic of T'Challa and his family, and T'Challa's love for his father, and T'Challa's strong knit family. His love, his sister, his love. When Nakia wasn't in his family, but his sister, his mother, Ramonda, his love for his father, just his half brother Wakabi, just the deep family structure that T'Challa had, and you juxtapose that to Killmonger, and Killmonger doesn't really have a family. Killmonger's family is he just has had his father, and his father died. They say nothing about his mother. So that was one of the first things I picked up on, the lack of the father figure, and how I think that directly plays a role in Killmonger's misguided rage. And let me continue. I said that a second ago. When we see Killmonger travel into the spirit realm to speak with his dead father, we realize how radically different his life would have been had his father not been murdered by T'Challa. However, his father bears some of the blame. Okay, why did he have his son in America to begin with? Like, if your whole purpose for being here is to start a revolution, essentially, and to arm black people, essentially, that's the underlying message for why Njoku, I think was his name, why he was in America. Why is your son even here? Why not leave him in Wakanda where he would have been safer? That's a good question. If you're in America arming black people, why would you put your son in that environment? And I think, and I have to rewatch the movie, but it seems like I remember a part when Killmonger goes to the spirit realm and you see him as a child, right? That's very symbolic. You see him as a crying child. And if I remember correctly, his father is sympathetic. His father admits that he's done wrong. Because I think his father admits that, hey, I shouldn't have had you. I should have never put you into this predicament. Okay, so that son-father relationship was very heavy in the movie. Like you really had to take notice to that, and how that fueled a lot of his rage. Okay, Killmonger would have had a completely different future had his father not been. Now, yeah, T'Chaka bears responsibility too. Okay, getting into the infighting, the infighting between brothers, brother versus brother, black brother versus black brother, T'Chaka versus N'Joku, and how the infighting within the black community does damage to the black community. This is heavy. I'm peeling back the layers. Okay, you see the infighting within the black community, not only representative between the infighting between T'Challa and Killmonger, who are cousins, but you also see this representative in the infighting between T'Chaka and N'Joku, T'Challa's father and Killmonger's father. And how this infighting between black people, between people in the community, this infighting between black people in the diaspora, how this is generational. How these problems trickle down, and the sins of the father becomes the plight of the sons. The sins of the father become the plight or the problem of the sons. So you see both Killmonger and T'Challa dealing with mistakes that both of their fathers made. This is heavy. This is how heavy this movie is. This is how deep this movie is. This is how, like, you can't really look at it at a surface layer. You can't really just say, oh, well, man, they making African American men, they making black American men look bad. No, like, you are missing the point. You're missing the deeper message. The Ryan Coogler is showing you something so deep. You really have to take a step back and look at what's being said here beneath the surface. The sins of the fathers. Both of their fathers made mistakes. N'Joku should have never had Killmonger in the United States. And why wasn't he with it? You mean to tell me N'Joku has his son outside playing basketball and he has guns up in the house? This man was a fool. Like, if you think about it. And not only that, look at what N'Joku did to push his noble agenda, his justified agenda of helping black people. But again, we're talking about misplaced anger and misplaced and wrong decisions that are made out of anger. N'Joku helps a colonizer steal resources from Wakanda. That's a problem. It's a problem that N'Joku, it is because of that mistake that N'Joku made. Okay, look at the damage that did down the road. Not only did Claw get his hands on vibranium, but you had Ultron, a killer robot, a killer Terminator type robot, who was able to get a hold of some of this vibranium too, and he was able to use it to make himself stronger. And it nearly destroyed the world. So this had reverberating impacts. He might have had a noble reason for doing this, but look at who he allied himself with. He allied himself with the MCU, the comic book representation of a European who goes to Africa and steals resources. And Joku allied himself with that man purely just to help black people. Again, the cause was noble, but it did damage. That's the underlying message. So yeah, like, so T'Chaka, his reaction was all wrong. T'Chaka, and this is what a lot of people have picked up on. First of all, we all know T'Chaka should have never killed his own brother. Okay, that's obvious. That's number one. But to pour salt onto the wound, he leaves Killmonger there. He abandons Killmonger, who is of royal blood. So this has negative impacts. And T'Challa doesn't like this when he hears about it. Because you know why? With the second time T'Challa goes to the Jalia, that's what it's called. I'm going to call it the Spirit Realm, and I think they even call it the Spirit Realm in the movie. But in the comics, it's called the Jalia. Okay? It's basically where certain adepts, like the Black Panther, and we even see Shuri do this as well, they can go into this spirit realm and communicate with the spirits and with their ancestors and things. Okay, so we see the second time T'Challa goes to the spirit realm, his whole perspective of his father has changed because he realizes that Killmonger has a grievance. He realizes that Killmonger has a legitimate claim to the throne, and he doesn't like it. Again, sins of the father. All right. So, continuing, and everybody that's listening to this right now, like this video and retweet it on Twitter, on Facebook. Go ahead and share this video because people need to hear this. People need to hear like the multiple sides of this movie. Like, this is a deep discussion we need to have in the community right now. Alright, so I'm going to continue with the article that I wrote for the Progressive Army. You can read it there. You can read it on progressivearmy.com. You can read it on blackandintellectual.com. I have it reposted there as well. So let me continue. It says, I don't think it's an accident that Ryan Coogler, the director, chose 1992 Oakland to set the stage at the beginning of the movie. Oakland was a powder keg that year, and in 92 was the same year of the Rodney King riots. This is the context by which Killmonger was raised without a father. He was raised in a city going through a violent, turbulent time when police brutality was heavy. Police brutality was heavy, and gang warfare was at a high point. Something else, and I didn't include this in the article, Oakland, of course, obviously, is also a reference to the Black Panther Party. So, it's not a mistake that Ryan Coogler used Oakland, especially Oakland 92. There's a lot of messages within that too. So yeah, like, so Killmonger is raised. You're led to believe he's raised by himself, but obviously, he would have had to have been raised by somebody else. They don't really go into his backstory like that. But yeah, this is the context by which he was raised. He was raised in this environment. So this just makes T'Chaka leaving him behind even worse. T'Chaka left Killmonger behind in a city that was about to explode. T'Chaka, T'Chaka effed up, man. Like, T'Chaka was kind of a dirtbag. Like, and don't get me wrong, like this is what he meant when he told T'Challa in the Jalia, in the spirit realm, when he said that, and I'm paraphrasing because I don't have the exact quote in front of me, but, it's hard for a good man to be a king. This is what he's referring to. He's like, look, like I don't like I know like you respect me and you love me because I'm your father and all this other stuff, but T'Challa, I did some dirty stuff. I did some dirty things as king. I did some dirty things as king. You know, some things that you might find. And so that quote that he says in the jailer about it's hard for a good man to be a king, he's foreshadowing. He's saying like you're gonna come across some things and your perspective of me is gonna change a little bit. Okay, so then lastly, when just discussing the rage of Eric Killmonger, there's a deep message, and I need people to peep this. I need people within the community to peep this. There's a deep message about self-hatred within the African American community that I cannot allow to go unmentioned. Killmonger, understand this. When I was writing this article, I was like, oh my God, I can't believe Killmonger was of Wakandan blood. We know this, right? Killmonger was of royal blood. But get this. He did not see himself as being of Wakanda. Let me repeat that. Killmonger was of Wakandan blood, but he did not see himself as being of Wakanda. There was a self-hatred there. He didn't really see himself as being one of them. He saw himself as an other. He was more like the colonizers than he was a Wakandan. Because, and this was going back to his CIA training, the stuff that I mentioned earlier in the article. He was more like the oppressors than he was like a Wakandan. That's deep. I was reading Du Bois, and it's crazy how a lot of people are talking about Du Bois 150. This is the anniversary of Du Bois. 150th anniversary, I think, of Du Bois' birth, if I'm not mistaken. Du Bois was a sociologist among a lot of things, and Du Bois talked about the double consciousness. What is the double consciousness? Because I need people to peep this. Ryan Coogler put the double consciousness of Du Bois, whether he did it intentionally or not, he put the double consciousness of Du Bois in this movie. It's reflected in Killmonger. Killmonger has the double consciousness. What is the double consciousness? The double consciousness that Du Bois wrote about, okay, is the mask, the for the lack of a better term, the fakeness that black people have to perpetuate for the dominant white society, for white society at large, okay, to be more to be more accepted within society. Frantz Fanon also talked about this double consciousness, this mask that we have to wear in the public to make ourselves more presentable. How we can't be, quote unquote, too black. Okay, so you see this double consciousness in Killmonger, because Killmonger has that double consciousness. He is clearly a person who grew up among the people he did not like a lot of us. And I'm not saying we all have self-hatred. I'm not saying that. But the self-hatred that you see in a lot of diasporans, and this isn't just about African Americans. I keep bringing that up. You see this self-hatred not only in African Americans, you see this self-hatred in a lot of people in the diaspora. Because in a lot of people in the diaspora, whether you're talking about black people in the UK, black people in the Caribbean, black people in South America, we are all minorities. minorities. We are all ethnic minorities in countries where lighter complexion people dominate, where they have more control, where they have more resources, where they have more privilege. Okay, so because of that, it forces a lot of us to wear these masks, to have these different roles. So on the one hand, yeah, Killmonger, he wanted to be about his people. But even as badly as he wanted to be about his people, he couldn't help but use the tactics of his oppressor. So he saw him, so he was of royal blood, but he did not see himself as being of Wakanda. Because he was disassociated from his people. He was disassociated like the people stolen from Africa. Okay, in the early modern period. Okay, stolen from Africa, taken across the Atlantic Ocean. Stolen across the Atlantic Ocean. Okay, stolen by the colonizers. And where do we first go? We first made our way into the Caribbean, and we were broken. We were broken spiritually. We were broken linguistically. We were broken psychologically. Killmonger is broken in this same sort of way. And you can see how disassociated he is from his people. You can see how disassociated he is from his ancestral homeland. This is why, despite all of the positive stories his father told him of his homeland, of Wakanda, like a lot of people, you have a lot of parents and a lot of Afrocentric parents and Afrocentric grandparents and things like that. No matter how much his Killmonger's father told him of his homeland, told him of his people, the first thing he did when he got to Wakanda was subvert Wakanda. Killmonger not only hated that his father was murdered and that he was left behind, he was right to be hated about that, but also deep down inside, he hated Wakanda itself. We see him burning Wakanda. We see him burning the heart-shaped herb. We see him threatening to kill some of the elderly, the women in the country. He had the woman, when she questioned him, he grabbed her by the throat and lifted her up and acted like he was about to kill her. He did not like Wakandans. Killmonger mentions in the movie about how he learned to kill in other countries just to prepare himself for his eventual return home. This dude was toppling governments around the world, thinking about Wakanda while he was doing it. His entire mental state when it came to his own people was highly antagonistic from the very beginning. All right. So I think that's extremely deep. And I don't see anybody saying that. I don't see anybody else talking about that. If you've seen somebody who has this perspective as I have, let me know. And I'm not saying it's a bad thing. This is what I love about this discussion. I love how layered this movie is, so that everybody can look at the movie and see something different. That's a beautiful thing to me. I don't think that's a negative, that's a positive. So now let's change topics. I'm sticking to Black Panther, but I'm going away from Eric Killmonger. And I want to talk about Wakanda as a pre-colonial African utopia. Marvel's Black Panther is a movie written with an African diasporan audience in mind. That's clear. maybe to an extent. I know because I heard the director Ryan Coogler. He did seek the advice of a lot of African people because he didn't want to portray Africa in a negative light, and he was very careful about that. But from what I see this movie having more messages for the diasporan than the African. Not to say that they don't have things that they can take away from it, but let me explain what I mean by that. Originally created by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby, yes, two white men. That's something else. I'm a go back to this sentence in a second. That's something else I've been hearing from people. Well, you know the white man created this, brother. You know this was created by two white men in the 60s, and it's not black. It's not really black. All of the Marvel comic characters, the black ones and the white ones, were created by white people for the most part. Most of the important ones were created by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby. But get this though, that's not really important because if you look at the modern influences of the Black Panther character, all of the influences of the Black Panther character, especially the influences for the movie, came from black writers. Okay, Christopher Priest, Reginald Hudlin. Christopher Priest wrote Volume 3. Reginald Hudlin wrote Volume 4, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know who wrote Volume 5. That was the volume with Shuri, where Shuri was the Black Panther. I didn't look that up actually. And then of course everybody knows Ta-Nehisi Coates, another black writer, is behind Volume 6, the most recent volume. Okay, so all of the modern influences of the Black Panther character comes from black writers. It's important to bring that out. Even though yes, the character was created originally by two white men. I just want to put that out there because I don't want people to accuse me of ignoring that. But get this, Ryan Coogler brings us a civilization, Wakanda, straight out of the pages of Afrocentric history. Okay, people say Killmonger represents African Americans, and I agree to an extent. But so does T'Challa. And I said this a second ago, and I'm going to expand on that. Well, I said this at the beginning of the video, but I'm going to expand on it. Not because we can sympathize with the royal character. So I'm not saying that T'Challa represents African Americans because, you know, we can sympathize with a royal character more than a character from the streets of America like Killmonger. Like, no. We definitely, I think, sympathize with Killmonger way more than we sympathize with T'Challa. But even within the character of T'Challa, you will find the African American and other blacks of the diaspora. Because within the character of T'Challa is the African American vision of who and what we were before slavery. Wakanda and T'Challa is a play on pre-colonial African history. Pre-slavery African history. He's representative of the chivalrous spirit of the black American man who calls his woman his queen. Now, what do I mean by that? There's a lot of duality in this movie. Like I said earlier, this is a deeply metaphysical movie. And there's a lot of duality. I mentioned the double consciousness earlier, a second ago, when it came to Killmonger. Okay, but there's even a duality, an African American duality, within both Killmonger and T'Challa. T'Challa is the representation of the Afrocentric self. Well, let me repeat that. T'Challa is the representation an African American representation of the Afrocentric self. So you have people who talk about knowledge of self. T'Challa is a representation of knowledge of self, and so is Wakanda. Let me explain. Despite the fact that Killmonger has a lot of hate for Wakanda, the deeper message is that Killmonger, the African American, comes from greatness. People have missed this. People have only said that, oh, well, Killmonger, he's portrayed negatively. And something else, I don't think Killmonger is a representation of black radicalism. I'm getting hoarse. I don't think Killmonger is a representation of the black radical tradition per se. I think he's a representation of the African American history of greatness. And like I said in the article, the deeper message is that Killmonger, the African American, comes from greatness. Killmonger, the African American, is descendant of royalty and can make claim to a great African civilization. So people are only looking at the negative connotations of Killmonger as a character and not the positive connotations of Killmonger as a character. It is important to note that Killmonger and T'Challa are cousins, which is not how their relationship is presented in the comics. In the comics, they're not cousins. But Coogler and company went in that direction in the film for a reason. Killmonger is the representation of black people who talk about ancient Kemet, black people who talk about ancient Mali, not in his actions. I'm not talking about his actions anymore. I was talking about that earlier when I was talking about his rage. I'm not talking about he's a representation of people like this, of Afrocentrism in his actions. He's a representation of Afrocentrism in terms of what black people in America say about black history. Killmonger comes from greatness. And conversely, on the opposite end of that spectrum, T'Challa is the greatness. So Killmonger is representative of people who come from greatness. T'Challa is representative of that greatness. Because he's a king, he's royalty. Another aspect of the utopianism of Wakanda can be seen in the control of their own resources, in the control they have of their own resources. Wakanda is a fictional reflection of how great African nations could have been and could still be, were their resources not constantly being taken from them, from the continent to benefit people who are not from the continent. This is why in many ways Wakanda's isolationism can't be viewed as a negative. I touch on that in a second. So Killmonger is an anti-hero. All right? He's not a villain. He's an anti-hero. This is a story about a hero and an anti-hero. It's not a story about a hero and a villain. So let's talk about Wakanda's isolationism. Let's talk about Wakanda's isolationism and its impact on the African diaspora. So, the isolationist tendencies of Wakanda have been criticized because we view this from the point of view of a nation like America dominated by white men that never would have had to face the global treachery that an African nation like Wakanda would have had to face. It's very important that people view their isolationism not as a negative. Now, yes, if we're talking about a real government, like a real African nation, yeah, like that nobody should be isolationists. Nobody should cut themselves off from the larger society. I mean, countries have the right to do what they want to do at the end of the day, but your country is not going to be viewed favorably if in the real world you are isolationist. But in comic book land, in Marvel land, this is not a bad thing necessarily. If you had a situation where, and I think this is reflected in the fact, I think the deeper message with even Wakanda's isolationism is that it was their isolation. It was their holding of their resources to themselves. And to the negative side of this, even to the detriment of black people abroad. But it was their holding of their resources amongst themselves that actually made them great. A lot of times with black people, and this is like a real world lesson, a lot of times we care a little bit too much about sharing our wealth and sharing our access. We want everybody to kind of, accept us and come in and we share everything. And this is why a lot of people didn't like the ending about the UN, which, like I said, I haven't forgotten about that. I'm going to get to that at the end of this video. But I think that it's an important story that within Wakanda's isolationism, that's actually when they became great. Now here's the thing though. They wouldn't have Wakanda couldn't expose itself to the world the way a European nation would have exposed itself to the world. Because they would have certainly come under attack. Which is why even in the movie, at the beginning of the movie, they talk about how, they were seeing what was going on in society, in the world, and all of the wars and slavery and things like that. And they decided to go underground. That's a lesson. That's basically Ryan Coogler saying Wakanda's isolationism was a form of protection. They had to protect themselves in that way to prevent everything that was going on in the world happening to them. No nation dominated by white people ever had to deal with colonialism. None of these nations had to deal with slavery. They were, in fact, the chief benefactors of both. So Wakanda couldn't interact with the world during the age of slavery the way a white nation would have interacted with the world. They had no choice but to be isolationists. Now here's what happened. Wakandan isolationism has to be viewed in the context of those factors of actual real history. But could they have defended themselves against one of these nations by themselves? Yes, they could have. I'd imagine from a fictional comic perspective, definitely yes. They could have defended themselves against the United States. Colonial America. They could have defended themselves against colonial Britain. But could they have defended themselves from every global power in the world for hundreds of years? Even with vibranium, that's much harder to ascertain. At the beginning of this article and at the beginning of the video, I mentioned Ulysses Claw. The creators missed an opportunity to delve into his representation of colonial thievery on the continent. Okay, our interaction with Claw and Killmonger occurs at a London museum where Killmonger looks upon the scores of items that represent stolen African legacies. Killmonger even mentions this before the curator falls to her death from a poisoned drink. So we see, very briefly, they didn't touch on this, and I honestly, this is why I kind of wish this movie was, part of a larger format, because I think there was probably a lot to tell here with this story about neo-colonialism. Okay, but hold on one second. Hold on one second. Okay, so yeah, so even my computer just froze up, so I had to get everything back on track, and I just lost my frame of thought. But look, at the beginning of the article, I was talking about Claw, and here's the thing about Claw. Like I said earlier, Claw is the representation of colonialism in this movie, but they water it down. The director decides to tell a story more so about the relationship between black people, which is apparent within the relationship between Killmonger and T'Challa. Okay, but there's a deeper story about colonialism and the character of Claw, and this again is why Wakanda had to be isolationist. They knew they had something powerful that if the rest of the world had access to, can you imagine how much damage the United States, how much damage colonial Britain, how much damage the Belgium during the age of imperialism, how much damage they could have done if they had vibranium? They had to hide the vibranium. If the world had access to vibranium, because Wakanda was an isolationist, if Wakanda was open to the world from the very beginning, it would have theoretically made the plight of black people in Wakanda and around the world that much worse. So I think I love the part when they introduced Claw and Killmonger at the museum. I love that, and the nod to European colonialism, and how you have a lot of the treasures of Africa sitting in museums in Europe. Every black person, and I suspect even white people as well, but definitely every black person immediately got that. You know, they didn't really even need to delve into that more than they did. Everybody got that. Now, I don't blame the creators as much as I do the format for kind of watering down the neo-colonial angle of this story. I don't blame the creators. I blame the fact that this was a film. And when it comes to film, especially with like the MCU movies, they don't make these movies 3 hours long, because the longer these movies are, the more money Disney has to pay, or the more money Disney has to dish out. This movie was a little over 2 hours long. I want to say it was like maybe 2 hours and 16 minutes long, and it required a $200 million budget. So you can imagine how much extra money would have been added on, how many millions of dollars would need to be added on to tell a more engrossing story. But there's only so much story that one can tell over 2 hours. Netflix has spoiled us, ladies and gentlemen. We're used to Luke Cage being 10, 12 episodes long. We're used to Daredevil being 12 episodes long. We're used to Jessica Jones and Iron Fist, which wasn't good. We're used to these long, almost drawn out Marvel stories. And it kind of sucks when you're kind of watching a movie that only really in Netflix terms would have only been like 2 episodes. But everything that I was saying makes me sympathetic to Wakanda's isolationism. They didn't isolate themselves because they hated other groups of people. It's important. It's like, so let's stop the Donald Trump references. I've seen a lot of people, because there was some meme going around talking about how T'Challa is really Donald Trump. And I've seen some black people say, well, they got a point. No, they don't. They were not isolationists. They did not, quote unquote, build the wall, because I've seen some people try to say that the little energy field, the little augmented reality, virtual reality energy field that they had shielding Wakanda, how that's representative of the wall. Like, no, they didn't cut themselves off because they hated other groups of people. He is not Donald Trump. He did not cut himself off because he hated groups of people, because they hate other groups of people. They cut themselves off to protect themselves from outsiders, to make sure this powerful energy, this powerful mineral, vibranium, doesn't get in the hands of the colonizers. They literally have something that can empower the natural world around them. So much so that they can take the heart-shaped herb, they can ingest the heart-shaped herb and go to an entirely different realm. So they had no choice but to isolate themselves. Here's the problem. They became attached to their isolation. They became attached to their isolation to the detriment of other groups of oppressed people who could have used their help. See, this is where their isolationism does become a problem. Let me make sure my music is not about to run out, because I've been talking for a minute and I'm not done yet. I'm not done yet, because I really want to take my time breaking this down. Okay, yeah, so I still have some music left. I'm gonna try to be done before this track is over. So yeah, let me go back to the article. Oh, where am I at? Okay, so yeah. They became attached to their isolation. Okay, so this is the source of Killmonger's dislike of Wakandans, and why his father was overseas in America in Oakland during one of the city's most turbulent periods in the 90s. It was because they became too isolationist. So when the time came when they should have been like, things are getting better around the world, colonialism is over, African nations have gotten independence now, maybe we can start, showing ourselves to the world. They allowed their isolationism to become a tradition. And this is where Wakanda is in the wrong. This is where Wakanda is in the wrong. Like, this is also a story between tradition and progress. Traditionalists versus progressives. Part of T'Challa's arc, part of his character arc, is that he goes from the beginning of the movie from being a traditionalist in the mode of his father to being a progressive. He was influenced by Killmonger, and I'm not saying Killmonger was a progressive, but he forced T'Challa to change. Nakia, in many ways, forced T'Challa to change. So we see T'Challa going from his character arc, going from being a traditionalist to being more of a progressive. And opening himself up to the world, and opening Wakanda up to the world. Now, I don't necessarily care for the final scene where his view of being progressive is by opening some rec centers. Some rec centers in Oakland. I think they could have expressed it a little bit better. But yeah, so I understood where they were going with his character arc. I understood where they were going with that message. I just think they could have expressed it a little bit better. Now, let's talk about, let me change topics. Let me change topics again. I have 2 topics left to talk about. I want to talk about the metaphysics of T'Challa and Killmonger. And this is probably the deepest I'm going to go in this video. And after I talk about that, I'm going to talk about the progressive role of women in Wakandan society. But let's talk about the metaphysics of T'Challa and Killmonger. Something that I've been touching on all throughout this live stream. The duality. The double consciousness. Both Killmonger and T'Challa are right in their own way. Killmonger is chaos. T'Challa is order. Killmonger comes to destroy. T'Challa is about making sure things don't fall apart. So Killmonger is chaos. T'Challa is order. Killmonger is the rage of Black America, which I touched on earlier in the video. T'Challa is the harmonious calm and love of tradition in Black America, where nothing seems to hurt us no matter how hard people try to hurt us. Killmonger is who we were at times, or who we are at times. You know, the misguided anger. Killmonger is who we are at times. T'Challa is who we like to be. And I'm not talking about from the point of view of an elitist. I'm talking about from the point of view of ownership, control, power, influence. T'Challa has all of those things. T'Challa has everything that we lack. So Killmonger is who we are. T'Challa is who we like to be. Maybe not in terms of royalty, but in terms of having that access on the world stage, having that power on the world stage, having the ability to check our oppressors on the world stage, having the ability to show them up on the world stage. T'Challa is representative of all of that. And Killmonger was envious of this. Killmonger was envious of what T'Challa had. If you could literally, Killmonger and T'Challa are mirror images of each other. Literal mirror images. You could, if Killmonger was looking in a mirror, he would see T'Challa. Because T'Challa is the positive version of himself. If T'Challa was looking in that same mirror, he would see Killmonger. Killmonger is the negative version of himself. Killmonger is what T'Challa would have been if T'Challa had been left in America and left to fend for himself. Conversely, T'Challa is what Killmonger would have been had he not been abandoned. Had he been allowed to be raised in Wakanda amongst his people. They are mirror images. This is a movie about duality. Okay? If there were ever a representation of the metaphysical Taoist representation of yin and yang in the MCU, it's clearly Killmonger and T'Challa. I don't think there's any hero anti-hero dynamic in the MCU anywhere among any series of heroes and villains or heroes and anti-heroes where this yin and yang is more apparent. They represent the dualities of light and dark, fire and water, hot and cold, all of those things. T'Challa, in my opinion, is actually representative of the feminine principle of yin. T'Challa is the feminine principle in this movie. Not to say that there are obvious and clear feminine characters in the movie with the female characters. But even within the female character, I just thought about this. Even within the female characters, you see the masculine and feminine energy in even the female characters. That is how deep this movie is. That is how deep this movie is. You see the feminine and masculine principles in the male characters, and you see the feminine masculine principles in the female characters. T'Challa is the feminine principle. And I'm not saying that as a knock or as a negative. He is the compassionate man. He is the caring man. And he leads a cloaked and hidden civilization. If you do some quick Google searching into what yin means hidden. Yin means obscure, quiet, shadowed off, cut off. That's all yin. That's that yin energy. And look, T'Challa is literally the leader of a cloaked and hidden civilization. He has all of the traits of the feminine principle, and he literally leads a country in Wakanda that is the direct representation of feminine yin energy. Wakanda is the feminine principle. Killmonger, on the other hand, hold on, let me get my notes. Let me get my notes right. Killmonger, on the other hand, is definitely, easily, hands down, the representation of the masculine principle of Yang. And that he is aggressive. He is aggressive and he is dominant. He whoops T'Challa's ass. He whoops T'Challa's ass so much that he throws him off the little waterfall, the mountain, whatever it was, whatever you call it. Y'all know what I'm talking about. Y'all saw the movie. He throws him off the waterfall. Killmonger bests T'Challa in combat. Why? Because he is the masculine principle. Killmonger's whole demeanor throughout the whole movie is aggressive. Everything he does is aggressive. Instead of being concealed, again, when we're talking about yin and yang, we're talking about opposites. We're talking about polar opposites. So whereas the yin, which I was talking about with T'Challa and the feminine energy, whereas he is representative of the cloaked and hidden civilization of Wakanda, Killmonger is representative of, instead of being concealed and hidden to the world, Killmonger is open to the world. Killmonger is of the world. Because he was born in another land. And he literally was trained by forces in that other land. And he was used as a weapon of war all across the world. So Killmonger is of the world because he's been all over the world. That is that yang energy. Yin and yang, when combined together, like when you do the research, and I'm not saying this is real. Like I'm not speaking on this from a point of view of belief. Like I'm speaking on this from the point of view of metaphysics. Okay, so I'm not a Taoist. I'm not saying that. I'm speaking more so on metaphysics and the messages in the movie. So when you do the research, when combined together, when you combine yin and yang together, and everybody's seen those pictures of the circle, the black side and the white side, and the yin and the yang, it is thought to bring about balance in nature. You can't be balanced without both the feminine and masculine principles, of which T'Challa and Killmonger represent. It is only after their interactions that change occurs in Wakanda. Wakanda progresses as a society as a result of the conflict between Killmonger and T'Challa. Because they are representative of the yin and the yang. They are representative of those energies coming together. And it changes it changes. Well, it doesn't really show it changing Killmonger because he dies. They could have changed that. They could have made the message more clear if we actually see Killmonger changing instead of dying at the end of the movie. I would have liked to have seen Killmonger change his ways and become even more of a sympathetic person instead of dying in the movie. So I think they kind of missed that opportunity when they killed off the character. But we definitely see the change in T'Challa. This is part of his whole character arc. We see him at the UN. At the UN, T'Challa is of the world now. He's opening Wakanda up to the world. Because he has now experienced Killmonger's energy. So he's been influenced by Killmonger. That is the deep message in this movie. T'Challa is influenced by the anti-hero. That is how powerful Killmonger as a villain is. He changes the hero. In so many of these movies, you don't see that. You don't see the villain changing the hero. You see the villain dying, and that's it. And that's the hero stays the same. The hero, in so many of these movies, these MCU movies, the hero is the exact same way at the end of the movie as he was at the beginning of the movie. I've seen that in so many of these movies. You don't really see much change in the characters. You don't see the villain influencing the hero. And the hallmark of any good villain is their ability to not only have their own character arc, a strong character arc, which is what Killmonger has, but it is their ability to change the hero. And we see that in Black Panther. We see that duality. You can also see the duality in the fact that Killmonger somehow got a hold of his own Panther-style suit. Now, they don't show this in the movie. I assume it was cut out of the movie. But if you watch the movie, the first time T'Challa goes into Shuri's lab, okay, you see two suits that she's developed. One of those suits is the one that T'Challa actually uses. The other one is the Killmonger suit. A lot of people might have missed that because they don't actually show Killmonger taking the suit. They show him actually already using the suit. So that kind of throws people off because they didn't actually show it in the movie. But we literally see two Panthers fighting each other at the end of the movie. Again, the duality, the yin and the yang, the good Panther and the evil Panther, both representing the Panther duality. Killmonger's, get this, check this out. Killmonger's color is gold. In the comics they call it the Golden Jaguar, but they don't even use that term in the movie. It's just like the Golden Panther suit. Check this out. The color though is gold or yellow. Tell me why when it comes to, when I was telling you a second ago, Killmonger is representative of the Yang principle, the masculine principle. The color associated with the masculine principle, or the symbolism behind the masculine principle, is the sun. What color is usually used for the sun? Gold. Gold and yellow. That is the exact same color of Killmonger's suit. Once again, proving my point. Proving that Killmonger is representative of that energy, of that metaphysical spirit. But it goes deeper than that. T'Challa's color, his suit is what? His suit is purple or gold. It has the purple gold sort of thing going, or not gold, the purple blue things going on. And what is the symbol associated with yin? The moon. So yang is the sun, yin is the moon. So that color fits perfectly. T'Challa has the purple and the blue color, or the moon, and he's fighting his polar opposite, Killmonger wearing the same identical suit, but with a different color, the gold color representing the sun and the yang. But it goes deeper than that. Y'all probably like, man, this dude is looking at this too hard. But no, this is what I noticed. This is how deep I went with this. They did not really touch on Wakanda's spiritual system. And that's something else, again, going back to the format and the fact that this is a movie and they have two hours to tell a story. They can't do everything. They briefly at the beginning of the movie touched on the Panther god Bast. But even in Captain America Civil War, T'Challa doesn't just mention Bast, he mentions Sekhmet. Both of these gods are cat gods. Bast is a cat god and Sekhmet is a cat god. And guess what? They both come from ancient Kemet. They're both Kemetic or Egyptian gods. I don't know if a lot of people knew that. Some people might, but some people might not have known that. Let me play this short video up for you guys, just so I can drink this water too, from Captain America Civil War. Okay, where T'Challa is talking about Bast and Sekhmet. Just listen to this.
I'm very sorry.
In my culture, death is not the end. It's more of a stepping off point. You reach out with both hands and Bast and Sekhmet. They lead you into the green veldt where you can run forever.
That sounds very peaceful.
My father thought so. I am not my father.
T'Challa, task force will decide who brings in Barnes.
Don't bother Miss Romanoff. I'll kill him myself.
So you see what he's saying there. You see what he's saying there. Hold on, let me find my notes. So I think this is probably the deepest I'm gonna go with this. And this is probably the most where I'm probably reaching the most. And this is at the beginning of this live stream, I said that there are some things that I wanna rewatch the movie again to confirm certain ideas that I have. Okay. It's almost as if touching on the duality that I was speaking on a second ago and the relationship between Killmonger and T'Challa and how they represent different dual energies, masculine and feminine principles. Bast and Sekhmet is a representation of the unification of Egypt and the unification of Kemet. Bast was, I want to say, a lower Kemetic. He was worshipped where it was lower worship in lower Kemet. Sekhmet was worshipped in upper Kemet, but I might be getting those flipped. T'Challa is a clear representation of Bast, and even if you look at, obviously he's a representation of Bast because Bast is the Panther god. But Sekhmet is his they're both cat gods, but Sekhmet is more of a lion than a panther. And I just find it interesting how Killmonger is wearing the golden jaguar suit, which is, like I said, yellow or gold, which is representative, which is the same color that lions have. It's almost as if within this movie, there's a deep, deep, deep underlying message about unification and about black unification and we're told within almost the unification of Egypt. Because what happens is Wakanda splits apart. Wakanda begins to deteriorate when Killmonger is in power. And so it needs to be unified. So you have that unification of Wakanda at the end of the movie. It's just something that I noticed. I'm not going to go too deep into that because I want to watch the movie again before I touch on that. But since the last thing I want to touch on, because this video is going on super long. This video might be the longest video I've done about anything. The progressive role of women in Wakandan society. In Wakanda, women are very much in positions of dominance and leadership. So much so that in the comics, Shuri becomes the Black Panther and rules as queen in the short-lived Volume 5. An argument can be made that without his Panther suit and the essence of the heart-shaped herb, Okoye of the Dora Milaje could beat T'Challa in combat. And I truly believe that. We see T'Challa being beat by Killmonger. You know, I think Okoye could take T'Challa, to be honest with you. It would be a very good fight. Now, with the Panther suit and with the herb, no, I don't think she could. But if he was just like, if he didn't have all of those boosters, I think it would be a very even fight. Because the women in this movie are very powerful. I mentioned a second ago about how the male characters, especially Killmonger and T'Challa, you have the feminine and masculine energy in both of them. But within the female characters, you have that same feminine and masculine energy. The Dora Milaje are more representative of the masculine energy. And then you have characters like Nakia and Shuri who are more representative of the feminine energy. Okay, very, very balanced. This was a very balanced movie. Balance between genders, balance between groups of people. Very balanced. Okay, don't let the kingship fool you. Wakanda is easily one of the most socially liberal nations in the Marvel comic universe. In the new volume written by Ta-Nehisi Coates, we see women portrayed as saviors and as leaders of Legion of Men. We see a society that allows women to freely choose their loved ones. Like women like Anika and Ayo, who are so powerful that they can defy the throne of the Black Panther, steal the most advanced technology in the country, and start a revolution among women. The only one who is able to actually bring them back and stop the revolution is another woman, which is Queen Shuri herself, not T'Challa. And then it's important to note that the power of this movie for dark-skinned women of color. Dark-skinned black women. Let me just put it like that. Not women of color, black women. I think this movie was very necessary. For, even though it's a fictional film, for the collective psyche of black people, this film was a win. This film was a win. And it kind of upsets me that so many people are looking to attack the movie on grounds that I think are just unfair. Because it's like for some people with a lot of these Afro pessimists, it's like the people are never happy. We've been complaining for years about representation, and then we finally get a film where you have women being shown in these layered, complex, nuanced ways. You see the women warriors, and you see the women leaders, Ramonda. You see women in position of power who aren't warriors. You see women who are leaders in technology. A very balanced film. You see all different types of women. And we see women and their melanin and their dark beauty being celebrated. That is a very powerful thing. I don't see how people can do. I've seen people who have done 2 videos, 2 whole videos about this movie, not nitpicking. Well, I'm talking too fast. Nitpicking to hell for 2 hours, nitpicking this movie, not mentioning one thing about the role that this movie plays in portraying women in a positive light, portraying black women in a positive and powerful light. That's a problem. You shouldn't be so pessimistic that you just ignore a clear win like that. But let me continue. I'm almost done. In the movie, at no point do we see T'Challa commanding women to do anything. They sit at equals at the table of power when it comes to making decisions in the nation. And we see that when T'Challa's sitting on the throne, and you see Okoye there, she's making decisions, she's calling shots. You see Ramonda there, she's calling shots. There's another woman that's there who's part of another cult. There, she's calling shots. You see multiple women sitting at the seat of power. It's not just about T'Challa. It's not just about the king. Yeah, he has the final say-so, but they have a lot of influence over him. T'Challa comes to the point where he almost begs, or he's actually begging Nakia to return home. And it's clear that she doesn't have to return home if she doesn't want to. She's free to make that decision. We see Shuri giving T'Challa the middle finger, not in a hateful way, but in a playful way. But just showing that women in this society, women in Wakanda, have the ability to say, screw the king if they want to. We see women holding their own in combat and not needing men to come to their defense. To the point where Okoye tells W'Kabi that she will kill him to protect Wakanda. And who seriously thinks she would have lost that fight? I don't think she would have lost that fight. In Wakanda, men don't control women, and probably couldn't even if they wanted to. So this is not a patriarchal society. Let's not forget that let's not forget about Ramonda, who literally carries the title of Queen Mother. She's the most revered and respected person in Wakanda outside of T'Challa himself. Okay, so that's all I wanted to say about the hidden messages in Black Panther. I'm going to go ahead and end the music now. I might do another video in the future, after another viewing, and because I want to talk about the heart-shaped herb. I want to go deeper into Wakandan mysticism and Wakandan spirituality. I'm not going to put a date on that video, though. I don't know when I'm going to make that video. But these are some of the main things that I saw that I don't see a lot of other people harping on, at least not to the extent that I wanted them to talk about. So I knew I had to make this video. I knew that I couldn't talk about anything else in this live stream today. I didn't want to ruin this live stream by talking about the stupidity of the NRA. That's for another video, another day, another video. But just like this video, follow me on YouTube, follow me on Twitter @_BlackIntellect. Share this video, retweet it, because I want to have like a discussion. I want to see what other people think about this. And I will be back on Monday, same time at 12 o'clock. And have a nice day.